Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming today. Today, we are going to hear from the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board. We're going to be talking about expanded alcohol service areas outside. Um, just a little bit of housekeeping before we go on. We are recording today's webinar and it will be up on our website later on today. You can find it here. I just dropped the link in the chat, or you can wait until a little later on this afternoon or tomorrow morning. I will send you an email with a link and the presenter slides to go with it. If you have any questions, we will take them at the end of the presentation. You can type them into the Q&A section, and once we're done, we can go ahead and answer those live on air for you. And with that, I am going to hand this over to my colleague, Sean DeWitz. He is one of our government affairs employees. He does a great job with the Liquor Control Board. And good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Lisa. Thank you all for joining. As Lisa said, I am on the government affairs team. We are excited that House Bill 1515 passed this previous session. As the LCB will go into in a bit, this provides some expanded areas with support from the cities, a lot of which we saw kind of in that COVID area. But the legislature really wanted to give this opportunity to our industry to continue to test run what this model will look like in the long term. So we work cooperatively with the legislator on both sides of the aisle to get this through and really ensure that our cities, the LCB, and the state will be set up for a safe program moving forward. A few things. We know it sunsets in 2027. So with your cooperation and successful implementation, this will hopefully continue in the future. However, that is pending how the legislature moves forward. So we thank you for your support, working with the LCB and your local cities, municipalities, and counties to ensure that this is a success. If you have any questions after it, some of the policy or why the association went this direction, you can always reach out to me. Lisa can likely put it in the follow-up email, or you can find my information on our website. With that, thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it over to members of the LCB team to explain what this rule is and how it will be beneficial to our industry. Thank you.
I guess I'll just get started real quick. Hi, everybody. My name is Kevin Walder. I'm the Policy and Rules Manager with the Liquor and Cannabis Board. And I manage a rules team that has been working to implement Second Substitute House Bill 1515 through the adoption of administrative rules. The law actually took effect back in July. There are components of it that are already in effect, and we're looking to refine some of those requirements. And Daniel's going to go into that in a lot more detail in just a moment. And then our licensing folks will go over some process matters, and then we'll be available for questions after that. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Morning. My name's Daniel Jacobs. I'm a policy and rules coordinator with the Liquor Cannabis Board. I'm the primary rules coordinator responsible for implementing this bill, which I'll just call 1515. I can be a fast talker, so if I'm going a little bit too fast, please someone just let me know to slow down. I'm going to be focusing on the rulemaking aspect of this, and then I'll be talking about what you as liquor licensees, that's the LCB language for folks with liquor licenses, need to know about the expanded outdoor alcohol service authorization. And next slide. Great. So first, I just want to orient where we are now in the rulemaking. As we speak right now, this is called the public comment period. I'm going to explain in a little bit more detail what things mean, but I just want to ground where we're currently at. We've been in the public comment period since November 5th, and we will be until the public hearing, which is scheduled for December 11th. Assuming the public hearing then goes well, which I'll explain that in a little bit, We plan to request approval of the final rule language during the January 7th board meeting and hopefully have that rule language finalized and in effect February 7th. Next slide. The proposed rule language was filed in what is called the CR 102 on November 5th, following a presentation during a public board meeting and a vote and approval by the board. That rule language is publicly available, and we're actively hoping and wishing for folks to provide us feedback on it, which gets us to our next slide. Where we are right now, as I've mentioned, the public comment period. By law, we are required to give folks this amount of time so that folks can look at the rule language and submit feedback, preferably in writing, on what we did well, what we didn't do well, what needs to be different, questions. That period of time lasts up until the public hearing. As I've highlighted below, all this feedback can be sent, and please do send it to the rules email inbox, which is just rules@lcb.wa.gov. Next slide. Next, we have the public comment period open until the public hearing, which is scheduled for December 11th. On December 11th at 10 a.m., we're going to have this public hearing, which provides folks the opportunity to come and testify about the rule language. An invitation should be going out with the virtual Teams meeting link later this week. If you prefer to verbally explain your concerns and feedback versus putting them in writing, this is the opportunity to do just that. And as I mentioned, it's held virtually, and personally, I'd recommend doing it that way. There is an in-person option at our headquarters in Olympia, but just, all cards on the table. If you come down to Olympia, you'll be put into a conference room in front of a laptop where you'll be testifying via Teams. If that's what you'd prefer to do, great. Drive down to Olympia can be lovely, depending if you have to go by JBLM or not. Not trying to discourage in-person participation, but I just don't want folks to sort of schlep down to Olympia expecting to be able to, talk to Chair Vollendroff or talk to us in person and just look at us on a computer. I guess I'll also explain that typically the board members don't attend those hearings, and that's because the hearing is a formality in terms of staff members don't respond to folks during the public hearing. It's not conversational. If you have questions, we'll say thank you for your feedback. And if there's a particular question, I might be able to answer it after the hearing ends. But honestly, if you have a question, emailing the rules inbox is the best way to do that. Next slide. Oh, last thing I should mention is that the hearing is scheduled for 2 hours. However, that's going to depend on how many people come and testify. We've had public hearings before where nobody comes and testifies and it lasts for 5 minutes and then it ends. So if you want to attend this hearing and you see that it's scheduled for 2 hours, don't plan to attend at 11 a.m. because it's possible that the hearing ends in 15 minutes. If you really want to come testify, plan to be there at 10 a.m. so that you can testify. There's going to be more information when the invitation goes out on how to sign up. And again, if you don't have, if you're busy then and you can't testify, but you want to put your feedback in writing, email it to the rules inbox. After the public hearing, we gathered the feedback during the public comment period and during hearing testimony and decide if we can move forward to final rule language. If there are no changes or there are only minor changes, we can move forward. Additionally, if we get feedback that says, hey, would you say, this in the rule, I understand what you're getting at, but it's worded a little confusingly. I would say it like this. We can do that and then keep moving forward. Really, the only thing is if it's like, hey, you guys got a lot of this wrong and you need to go back to the drawing table, that could trigger what's called a supplemental CR 102. We try to avoid that as much as possible, especially when we're implementing legislation, but sometimes it's necessary. And if that happens, it pushes the timeline out a little bit. Knock on wood or knock on whatever material's nearest you. I don't anticipate that happening here, but it is a possibility. When we move forward to the next stage, assuming that the hearing goes well and we only have to make minor changes, the next stage is called the CR 103. And in order to do that, we have to respond in writing to all the comments and feedback that we get. So if someone says, hey, you need to make this big change, and we look at that and we're like, yeah, we're actually not going to do that. Maybe it's, hey, this change is outside of the scope of this rulemaking, or that change isn't in line with the spirit of the bill. We need to explain in writing why we're not going to do that. Next slide. So assuming all goes well, I plan to make a presentation and request approval of the final rule language during the January 7th board meeting. And by law, if it gets approved, hopefully it will, by law, the rule language goes into effect 31 days later. So hopefully we'll all have rules in effect February 7th. Next slide. So shifting to the rule language itself, while we know that 1515 created 3 separate liquor authorizations, I'm going to be focusing on the first one, which we've called the Expanded Outdoor Alcohol Service Authorization. The proposed rule language is proposing to create 6 new rules with 1 rule dedicated to each of the authorizations. This new rule will be hopefully numbered at WAC or Washington Administrative Code 314.03.10.210. A lot of the language is taken directly from the legislation, which is in statute at RCW 6624-800, Section 1. Next slide. I'm going to be going over the highlights of it. A lot of the rule language is just cut and paste directly from the statute, and I'm not going to go into detail on that because you guys can read the statute. Really, I'm sort of going to highlight here the main points that you guys are going to want to know about, or I assume you are. The first thing to talk about is notice to the board. So while the local government or your city, county, port authority, whatever's submitting the authorization needs to submit the bulk of the materials, we also need to have the liquor licensees that are participating let us know that they want in on this. Because in theory, you could have, in a given area, let's say you have 8 restaurants with liquor licenses, one of them might decide for some reason, hey, I don't really want to do this, like I want out. So that's why we need folks who do want in to say they want in. You don't all have to individually notify us. If you guys decide that, a bunch of you want to nominate a particular one as sort of your go-to and main point of contact for us, they can speak on your behalf. But let us know if you're doing that. Next slide. Jumping into everyone's favorite topic, barriers. So, yay. The law says that there has to be a barrier, and that's a barrier between the expanded alcohol service area and not the expanded alcohol service area. You have one of 2 options, but you got to pick one. You can use a permanent or movable barrier or a permanent fence-free barrier, which will be the next slide. The law says you have to have the barrier height at whatever your local jurisdiction says. So if your city says barriers have to be 1 foot, go with that. 3 foot, go with that. However, if your local jurisdiction doesn't say anything about the barrier height, LCB has, in our rule language, we're proposing to go with our default, which is 42 inches. How did we come up with that height? Great question. That was something that was the topic of protracted rulemaking several years ago. And honestly, we don't really want to reopen that can of worms now. I'm sure there are folks that would like to reopen and discuss that. That's for a different rulemaking. But we decided, you know what? We already have this number of 42 inches. Folks are familiar with it, regardless of their feelings about it. But and that's only the default if your local jurisdiction doesn't say anything at all. There's also the caveat about the slopes, but that's in the statute. So again, if you're on a sloped thing, the statute language explains that. Next slide. Or you can have what's called a permanent fence-free demarcation. These are also commonly known as turtles. But we do have requirements for the little bumps, the turtles. They have to be 6 inches in diameter. They can be no more than 10 feet apart, and they need to be visible at night. And what does visible at night mean? It means just that, visible at night. Put some reflective tape on it or something. Just don't paint them black. Because if folks are leaving a place at 8 o'clock at night in the winter or 10 o'clock at night in the summer, we want to be able to see where it ends. Also, you need to let LCB know which option you're using. We don't have a preference as to which one you use, but we do want to know so that if our folks come out, they know what to expect, whether to look for turtles or the fence-free or the permanent barrier. Next slide. So the statute also says that you don't this is talking about sort of your mass permit holders attending the area. Specifically says you don't need to have someone physically there all the time. You also don't need to have someone physically watching it all the time. So that's what the statute says. That's what we're going for. But we do want to make clear that however you decide to have someone monitor or not monitor it, that's your call. But that also means that if something happens and there's a violation that you get cited for and you want to, dispute it, and you come to us and you say, hey, I'm not even required to have someone there, we're not going to treat that as an excuse or a mitigating factor. We're like, that's your call. How you guys decide to monitor that area is your decision. While you don't need to have someone there all the time, you're still responsible for what happens there because the patrons are still, assuming they are, still consuming liquor. So how you decide you monitor that or don't monitor that is up to you, but you can't come using that as a shield later on if something happens. Next slide. The last thing is for the statute also specifically allows licensees to share with non-licensees, share this area. What do we mean by non-licensees? We mean folks that don't have liquor licenses. Folks that don't have liquor licenses aren't subject to our rules. We don't regulate them. The place doesn't have a liquor license. Like I just said, they don't have to worry about any of this. However, you do. So what does this look like? This is, let's say you've got a plaza area where you have, 5 restaurants, or I say restaurants, I don't just mean restaurants, right? Because it could be a brewery, distillery, winery, tavern, a whole bunch of them. I'm just using restaurants as an example, or sort of a placeholder. So let's say you have a stretch of restaurants and then you have a fast food franchise, or, a Cinnabon, a Baskin Robbins, whatever it is, someone that doesn't serve alcohol. You can still use that plaza that the non-liquor licensee is adjacent to, but there's specific rules you got to make sure you're following and specific things. I didn't put that in detail here, but if you want to look at it, that's part of this proposed rule language. I'll also just say that LCB's been sort of upfront about this, that we're not the biggest fans of this. This isn't something that we would have sort of allowed absent statutory instruction. So we're putting up guardrails because we have reservations about it, but it's allowed. So we're putting up some guardrails to make sure that the liquor licensees remember their responsibilities and putting the onus on you guys about the liquor, because the other folks don't serve liquor and we don't do anything about the other folks. Next slide. So the other 2 authorizations I'll just go into briefly. Again, my understanding is this presentation, you're really interested in the one I just talked about, but there's also the Civic Campus one. That's for cities above a certain size. That's for specifically a publicly owned campus. There are certain limited number of events that they can do a year, and they have to do a joint operating plan, which is the subject of its whole own separate rule. Again, not going to go into that here. That could be a whole separate presentation. Next slide. Then the last one is the fan zones. Those are the hosts, or those are the FIFA Cup ones. That's what a lot of people sort of publicly know about this bill. Similar, a lot of those rules are the same as for the Civic Campus, right? That's only during the World Cup. And again, my understanding was this presentation wasn't asked to focus on it. That could be a whole separate thing. But that's what I've got for you today. So thank you. And again, last plug, any questions, any concerns, look at the rule language. You got any feelings about it, submit comments to the rules inbox, rules@lcb.wa.gov. With that, I'll hand it over to my capable friends in licensing.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Kaylin Gooby. I am the Mandatory Alcohol Server Training and Responsible Vendor Program Manager, and I supervise the new team that is processing the applications we receive under Second Substitute House Bill 1515. We've joined the rules team today to talk about implementation of the new legislation and how to apply for these temporary authorizations, again with the focus on expanded outdoor alcohol services. So we'll provide an overview of the application process and what information is required of both the local government and the licensees. We will share about the Geographical Information System, or GIS map, that will help us map out the approved areas and the licensees within those areas that are participating. And that map will be public facing for anyone to see if they want to know if their local government has applied and have been approved for expanded outdoor alcohol services. We'll also share some resources you can find on our website that has more information about the new expanded alcohol services. We'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So again, just as we're presenting today, please add those questions to the Q&A. And I will apologize if I repeat some information that Daniel already shared, but I hope that just helps drive home what we're talking about today, and everyone can walk away with a better understanding of this legislation. So the intent of House Bill 1515 is to allow for event environments that emphasize safe crowd control while maximizing mobility for event guests, especially families, all while maintaining safe operations that ensure alcohol is not accessed or consumed by minors, overservice is prevented, and alcohol does not leave the premises. There are 3 new authorizations available through this temporary allowance. We have the expanded outdoor alcohol services, where local governments may request authorization for an area or areas in a city, town, county, or port authority for an ongoing period through December 31st, 2027. We have the licensees listed here that are eligible to participate, which is your beer, wine restaurants, spirits, beer, and wine restaurants, taverns, domestic wineries, breweries, distilleries, and snack bars. The licensees must be located within that approved area to be able to participate. This doesn't allow licensees to become mobile to join a shared outside area. You must be located within that approved area. And you'll notice here that not every on-premises liquor license is eligible to participate. So for example, like hotels or nightclubs, sports entertainment facilities, those license types must follow existing rules for outside service. Also, through the end of 2027, cities with a population of at least 220,000, it's going to be Seattle, Spokane, and Tacoma, may request authorization for expanded indoor and/or outdoor events on publicly owned civic campuses. They are limited to 25 events per year, and up to 7 of those events may be multi-day events. Caterers and special occasion licensees can also participate in this authorization, in addition to the other licensees you see listed here. And third, with the FIFA World Cup being hosted in Seattle, the host city and designated fan zones may request expanded indoor and/or outdoor alcohol sales and service during one multi-day event effective June or July of 2026. Again, caterers and special occasion licensees can participate in this authorization as well. Any questions about these 2 authorizations, the civic campus or fan zone events, please send those to the team. We're happy to set up a call if you have questions about those authorizations specifically. But again, we're focusing on the expanded outdoor alcohol service today. Next, we'll share some responsibilities for the local government. They must receive approval for the expanded outdoor area by submitting a request through the LCB portal. And we'll talk more about the portal and the application process in a bit. They must conduct a public engagement review and submit that to the LCB by September 1st, 2026. The public engagement review includes contacting individuals and groups within the community, examining whether adequate local resources were provided, and whether services were provided to keep the area clean. It also includes a cost-benefit assessment as well. They must ensure that all outdoor alcohol service areas either use those barriers or demarcations that Daniel talked about to indicate the space authorized for alcohol consumption. The local governments determine the barrier height and distance between the entrance and exits and will be asked to provide that information when they apply. If they do not determine a barrier height, again, we'll default to that 42-inch requirement. They must also report to the LCB how they will provide resources to ensure safety in the community, including law enforcement patrols, and how they will provide services to keep the area clean and free of litter. I'll add here that they're also responsible for paying the application fee, which is $1,700 for the expanded outdoor alcohol service authorization. Next, we'll share some responsibilities for the liquor licensees. After the local government has been approved, the licensees can then submit an added activity application in the LCB portal. The licensee will need to determine which barrier option they will choose, either the permanent or a movable barrier or a fence-free, permanent fence-free demarcation. We'll refer to the local government's application when we're reviewing the application from the licensee to make sure they're meeting the requirement that's set by the local government. They must also ensure that an employee with a mandatory alcohol server training or a MAST permit is assigned to the area when patrons are present. Like Daniel mentioned, draft rule language states that a MAST trained employee must be assigned to that area, but they're not required to be inside the outdoor alcohol service area at all times. Patrons are present, but not being present doesn't mean that that's acceptable grounds for mitigation of a violation. They must submit a joint operating plan and a site map of the shared area and provide a list of all of the licensees that are participating. Liquor licensees located within the approved jurisdiction can share an outside service area with other licensees, and they may also share that area with other non-licensed businesses that do not engage in the sale or service of alcohol. Consistent with the bill, all participants must accept joint responsibility for any violation or enforcement issue unless it can be demonstrated that the issue was due to one or more licensees' specific conduct. All participating licensees must acknowledge they accept joint responsibility by completing an attestation in the LCB portal. Next, we'll provide an overview of the application process. On August 27th of this year, applications for these authorizations were made available in the LCB portal. So any local governments or licensees wishing to participate must have an active LCB portal account before they apply. You can visit our website for user guides on how to complete the registration. We're in the process of creating user guides specific to applying for these 1515 authorizations. So that will help guide you through those application steps in the portal. So these steps here begin after the local government and licensees have registered in the LCB portal. First, the local government applies for one of the three authorizations. They will submit an operating plan and a site map. We'll ask them to provide parcel numbers of the proposed area so we know how to map it. We can accept parcel numbers from the local government, just a parameter, and fill in the rest because we know the size could vary. They will also submit payment for the authorization when they apply. And after the local government receives approval, licensees can then log into the LCB portal to submit an added activity application. Licensees that are interested in participating should definitely partner with their local government to see if they've been approved for the authorization they're interested in participating in, especially civic campus and fan zone events, just to see at the local level too what type of permitting is required. They can submit their own application or designate a primary licensee for a shared area and list the participating licensees. And every license that is listed will receive a task in the LCB portal to complete that attestation for joint responsibility. And once we've received the attestation from all participating licensees, we can approve the added activity application. And approval dates for the licensees is the same as it is for local government through December 31st, 2027. So any changes to the boundary, either from the local government or changes to the joint operating plan or site plan from the participating licensees, if they want to add or remove any participants, must receive board approval. So the request can be submitted through the LCB portal as a general request. Any questions about that after approval, you can contact the team and we'd be happy to walk you through that. These next couple of slides break down the application process in a bit more detail from the licensee's role. Again, this is after the local government has received approval. The licensees within that area can apply to participate by submitting an added activity application. They'll select the activity type, either expanded outdoor, civic campus, or fan zone, and they'll fill out their primary contact and activity information. Next, they'll list all of the participating licensees. And if they try to add a license number of someone who's not eligible to participate, they will receive an error message and can contact us if they have questions. After they list the participating licensees, they'll need to complete the attestation for joint responsibility, and they'll upload the joint operating plan and a site map of the area. I'll mention here too that as a primary licensee, you're not assuming any additional liability. You're not responsible for the other licensees that are participating. It just allows us to have one point of contact, one person to submit the operating plan, site map, makes it a bit easier to communicate. Once the primary licensee submits the added activity application, the participating licensees should automatically receive an email notifying them of a task that they need to complete in the LCB portal to attest to joint responsibility. So they'll log into their account and complete the task to attest to joint responsibility. Once we have all of the attestations, the application for the added activity can be approved. After, after approval, the LCB will add the approved area to a public-facing geographical information system, or a GIS map. There will be a different color-coded layer for each authorization. So, and each licensee that's been approved to participate will be listed on the map as well. So again, if anyone from the public or a licensee wants to quickly check if their local government has received approval, they can easily go to our website and find that. All right. As we come to a close, we want to share a new page on the LCB website that has additional resources and information about expanded alcohol services. You can find information specific to local governments or special occasion licenses, civic campus, fan zone events. We have a frequently asked questions page and a resources page that includes links to past presentations. And you'll also find templates there for the local government operating plan or the joint operating plan, some guidance for what we need when we request a site map. You can find all that there. And at the very bottom, there's a link to the expanded alcohol services map. We will need to update this. It says that there are no currently approved areas yet. We recently approved the City of Seattle for expanded outdoor alcohol services, so we're working on getting that updated. So if you check the map today, you might not see it there, but it should be reflected there soon. All right, so that concludes our presentation. We will open it up for those questions. And we've got the rules team here. We've also got our enforcement and education partners here if there's questions specific to enforcement. So we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Kaylin. And your hospitality team, everyone is also welcoming feedback. If you would like us to submit comments on your behalf, the LCB knows we work directly with our members. So if you have direct feedback you would like us to pass along as an organization, please also don't be afraid to reach out to myself. If you want to go directly to the LCB, you are welcome to do it, but I'm happy to be your voice for the industry. If you have further questions on FIFA, I'm sure they're happy to answer the outdoor civic zones and fan zones. LCB will happy to answer those, but we are also partnering with the beer, wine, and cider folks who are doing a webinar on that aspect, and we'll be sure to share information. So please don't hesitate to reach out to myself, our team, to also be an opportunity to learn more about this. I guess one question I had is kind of like setting an example. Can we maybe, I'm going to use one of my favorite restaurants down in Tacoma where I live, Doyle's. They have a space next to them. I know there's a bookstore on the other side, but if that were just to be a chicken sandwich shop, their space could be an opportunity for folks to bring their food in. Doyle's could do a cross partnership. I don't know how that lot is exactly owned, but let's pretend it's a public space. So instead of having that barrier stopping, being like no alcohol passes point, they would be allowed to share that space, use that space, and kind of have more of a free-flowing area behind the demarcation. Is that a correct understanding?
Yes, that's a great example, and how we would describe it as well. Of course, we'd have to have those barriers surrounding that area. Still, the barriers are the demarcations, but that's what we're envisioning as well. Just creating a more like outdoor family-friendly space where you can get food from one restaurant and drinks from another, and still meet together as a family or as a party to enjoy that together.
Wonderful. I think one reason we kind of really worked on this with representatives and senators from across the state is we often thought about the Seattle waterfront, like having two restaurants next to each other, hosting watching a game together for FIFA, and you didn't have to worry about where alcohol was. How do they track who's alcohol, or what are their expectations on tracking alcohol between the restaurants?
That's a great question. On the joint operating plan, we do ask them how they will distinguish their cups or their glassware, so we know which beverage is coming from where. They're also required to keep their point of sale and their records separate as well. So I think those are the key components on how to visually see how that is, where the alcohol is coming from.
Great. If one restaurant used a red Solo cup and the other one used a blue, and that was in the joint operating plan, would that potentially be a solution?
We haven't come across that scenario just yet, so I don't know if I have an answer for you, and I don't know if maybe our enforcement partners that may be more familiar with like current shared areas and what we've allowed in the past, but that may be something we could consider.
Cool.
Right. We do have some questions in the chat. This one has been answered in writing, but I thought it'd be good to answer on air. How will tribal governments who operate under MOAs with the LCB be allowed to participate in the authorization, if at all?
Hi, Mike. Kaylin, can I take this one?
Please, thank you.
Hey, Desiree Monroy, Policy and Education Manager here in licensing. So tribal governments interested in expanded alcohol service who are currently under our MOAs will want to reach out to us at the expanded alcohol services at lcb.wa.gov, and we'll coordinate with our tribal government liaison, Marla Conwell. This would pertain to expanded outdoor alcohol service, as well as potentially if they are in a designated fan zone area area, we could take a look at that as an opportunity for their incorporation as well. So there is, although the law does not specifically outline tribes, we have had some conversations and some questions about folks wanting to potentially participate in this.
All right. During the beer and wine webinar, will there be information available about fan zones?
Are you referring to the next webinar for the Washington Wine Institute?
Yes. And if not, how can we get more information about those?
Yeah, we can set up a separate webinar if there's a group that would like more information about those authorizations specifically. I believe the ask for that presentation was similar with the focus on expanded outdoor alcohol services, but if we need to expand on the other two authorizations, we have time to make that change and to dive a bit deeper into what those authorizations allow.
Can a restaurant with a deck that is currently serving alcohol expand their deck for more service?
So when I hear deck, I'm thinking, is it like a second story maybe, or just like you walk out and they want to expand their
One level.
So they can do that. I don't know if that would be a change they want to make permanently on their own through like an alteration separate from the expanded outdoor services, or if they want to expand into a publicly owned space. So they'd want to work with their local government, of course. But I could see that as an option to expand and participate in the authorization. They would just need to work with their local government and can do that as an individual licensee participating in the authorization.
Okay. And I'm not quite certain what this next question is in reference to, but what about harbor steps? If the writer could elaborate on that a little bit.
I believe Harbor Steps is a place in Seattle that folks congregate, kind of like a shared city center street corner. Is that like an option that the restaurants in that area could apply for that area, work with their city's permitting to share that space for that alcohol flowing? That's kind of what the person was looking for.
Yeah, I think that I would suggest reaching out to the city of Seattle. We've been working with Maureen Sheehan. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that last name correctly, but that was our point of contact when we were working on the approval for the city of Seattle. So I would direct that question to them and see what would be permitted at the local level before they apply for the added activity.
And back to the deck question, that space is on DNR property. Does that make any difference?
I don't know what DNR property means. Sorry.
I can answer that. So that's Department of Natural Resources. I don't know if a state agency can request the authorization. The types of local governments that can are a city, county, or a port authority. So that's the only thing I would add, is that if it's on like state property, that might be something that in addition to contacting the city of Seattle, you might want to contact DNR also.
Will multiple breweries be allowed to work together under their individual licensing and POS systems to create a large beer garden?
Working under their own POS systems, they said, or yeah, if they let's say you have breweries on the same street, they can maybe expand into the sidewalk or the street area, again with approval from their local governments, but they could absolutely share that space with other breweries.
I guess that
Do you-
oh, Lisa.
Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, thank you. I guess that leads me to another kind of question. How close do the restaurants have to be to each other to this be allowed?
There's really no limit to the size or distance between establishments. Again, I keep repeating it's something they want to work with their local authority on to see if they can grant approval for a large area. It would just all need to be enclosed either by that permanent barrier or demarcation, but it could vary in size.
Thank you for that. I think it's clear that many of our restaurants, we will also be encouraging our members to work with their local chambers. We'll be rolling out information. There are so many cities that need to individually do this, that your team, we are continuing to engage with LCB, large partners, some of these fan zones. So we really are going to need support. If you want your city to be pushing this, we'll have resources in the coming weeks. LCB, I know, said they're putting out practices on how to apply for this. But if you're not seeing your city actively do this, I encourage you to reach out to us here at the association. My information is available on our website to see what resources and connections we may have. Because until your city gets this approval and lets you know where these spaces are going to be allowed, the individual licensees will not be able to take advantage of this opportunity. Is that correct, Kaylin?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. I'll just add that we are still in a phase where we're really outreach efforts with the community, with licensees, local governments is still a very high priority right now. So we are talking about doing more targeted outreach to individual cities or counties, just to let them know about this authorization. They may not be aware. So we're trying to share as much information as we can as well to let them know what this new legislation can open up for them and their businesses in their area.
Another question from the audience. Does this help assist in applying for permits to close down streets for a large block party?
That's a good question. I think that's maybe describing like a different type of event, maybe something that would typically be held under a special occasion license. So that's really not changing. Like if it is like a one-time event, block party, or closing down an area temporarily, I would think that the same rules would apply, especially if there's a nonprofit involved with the special occasion license. Those rules aren't changing under this authorization for expanded outdoor alcohol service. So that nonprofit is still required to keep their alcohol separate. They cannot commingle. Different for the other two authorizations, but again, we're going to focus on the expanded outdoor. So this is more for like a permanent or ongoing thing through December 31st, 2027 of a shared consumption area.
So if a guest orders an alcoholic drink and then walks into the approved expanded area and offers that drink to a minor, who is responsible for that incorrect service?
I don't know if our enforcement partners want to.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to address that. I was going to come back and visit that red cup, blue cup scenario. And I was going to raise my hand at the end if I didn't have an opportunity. So I think I'm gonna go back to the red cup, blue cup. I think that would work. However, to answer the minor question, if we do have a red cup, blue cup, and somebody gets the blue cup, goes into the designated area, if they're walking by somebody that might have issued the blue cup, so I have a red cup, go by somebody, I bump into them and they see this youthful appearing person, they're still obligated to continue to check ID. Intoxication easier answer, because if I bump into anybody that's participating in this area, I'm going to hold that person accountable just because I have a blue cup and you're not issuing the blue cups, but I'm having the conversation with you. That person is still held responsible. So everybody that participates in this situation could be held accountable regardless of the color of cups. Because if I'm having a conversation with a different licensee that's participating and I'm intoxicated, that person is going to be held responsible. I don't care what color cup you're holding. So when a minor is approaching and they're 4 doors down and they are youthful appearing, I might hold the blue cup person accountable, but I'm also going to hold, if there's a conversation between a licensee from another location and that minor, I'm going to do my due diligence to check to see how young they are, if there's fake IDs involved, that kind of situation. So just because of that cup doesn't exonerate anybody else in that service area, if you will. So I don't know if I've answered your question.
I feel like you did, Jennifer. I think that was a great
Okay.
explanation. I also raise another one. If 2 restaurants are sharing a space near each other, red cup, blue cup, let's just stick with that for a bit.
Yeah.
Could you, if I get a drink and I go back in the restaurant, could I bring that alcoholic drink from that first restaurant into the second restaurant, or does it have to stay in a space?
Yeah, and I'm going to refer to licensing because I know that they're big into the rules on that. I swear I saw in the FAQs that they're not allowed to take red cup into the blue cup in their premises. Now, in the outdoor area, and help me out, Desiree and Kaylin, if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that you can take it from inside the facility into another facility, but I'll let them speak about that.
You are totally correct. It
Yes.
needs to stay in the outside shared area, and that applies to non-licensed businesses as well. You cannot take your drink into a non-licensed business either.
Thank you for clarifying that. I want to make sure everyone is aware. We want to be great partners with our LCB enforcement, education, and consulting team to make this as easy as on them. So please continue to review your operation plans that you submit so you're staying up to code. That is all the questions I had. Lisa, do we have any more in the chat?
No more in the chat. I think that's all we have. Any last words from you all today?
Sorry, just from the rules standpoint, the only thing I wanted to clarify was because we've talked about the upcoming wine, the upcoming other seminar that we can expand the scope of. I will just say that from a rulemaking standpoint, that one is scheduled to occur after the rule language is finalized. And so while, planning on attending and more than happy to give this explanation, the difference will be that assuming that we stick to our timeline, by that point, it will be too late for folks to submit comments to request the rule language be changed. I would sort of one more plug to say, if you hear something today that you're concerned about or that you think the rule language shouldn't say, between now and December 11th is the time to submit those comments yourself, or coordinate with your friends in the Hospitality Association to have you guys submit a comment on the behalf. I'll leave that between you guys to figure out. But I did just want to clarify that in terms of, while the content will be the same, the difference will be sort of what you can do about it at that point.
We do have one last question. Will to-go beverages be legal, like beer cans, cocktails, or bottles of wine?
If the licensee is currently approved to offer alcohol to go with an added endorsement on their license, they have to be eligible for that endorsement first, but they will still be able to sell alcohol to go if they're already approved for that.
Right.
Now, they shouldn't be selling it to go to then be consumed in the shared area. That's to be, taken home, just to clarify that.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. Again, to anybody listening, we will have this up on our website later on today. I did drop the link for that in the chat. As soon as it's available, we'll have it up there. And you will also receive an email either first thing tomorrow morning or later on today that will have the information from the presentation slides, a link to the video, and a couple of links to help you out along your journey. Once again, thank you all so much and have a great day.
Thank you so much for having us. Have a good day.
Thanks, everybody.